Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I think we basically have everyone here, so we can maybe start a little bit earlier than we expected. So, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm in board from GuideCo, Global Energy Interconnection Development and Cooperation Organization. It's my great honor to have you here at this important event on capacity building. We actually started the partnership with UNFCCC Secretariat 6 years ago, but today, this year is the first time for us to have a side event themed on capacity building. So this is actually very important because everyone knows GuideCo about the technical part, about the big backbone grid, international connected power grid. But actually, we're not just supporting the technical part, the backbone grid, the infrastructure, but we're also actually facilitating connectivity for people. We don't want to leave anyone behind. So actually, people is the center for energy transition. So that's why we want to have this crucial side event. So today's event is actually cognized with our strategic partner, International Hydropower Association. So we have Mr. Eddie, the CEO of International Hydropower Association with us, who is going to do the opening for us. We are also strongly supported by UNFCCC Secretariat, the capacity building team led by Mr. Alejandro. It's our great honor to have you today also joining our panel. So at the first beginning, I will take several minutes to introduce what we have done from GuideCo for capacity building. Because at the very beginning, we are very young. We were established 9 years ago, but we have done a lot. At the very beginning, we focused on the networking, side events, or research reports, and infrastructure construction projects. But we actually started like 3 years ago for capacity building programs. So I would like to take like 3 minutes to introduce the capacity building programs we have actually finished with our partners. Sorry, there's a little problem about the presentation. So maybe my presentation at first, and then we will give the floor to Dr. Yang Fang. Yeah, this is actually a very short introduction. Please turn to the first page. GuideCo is actually a non-governmental organization, but we are strongly supported by our members. So we do have a lot of resources for capacity building. We do have a very strong international network. It stopped on this page. Forget it, I would have a free talk. Okay. So right now we have more than 400 members from all over the world. So they are think tanks, universities, manufacturers, TSOs, generators, and as well as IHA, this kind of associations. So we do have a strong network also supported by UN agencies. For example, we have UNFCCC, we have WMO, we have UNSCAP, those regional committees. They're also supporting us for the local training programs. And we are also strongly supported by experts like Dr. Yang Fang, who is going to deliver a keynote speech, because we have a research institute under GuideCo. More than 70 research, very excellent experts. They're actually working under GuideCo. So, okay, we have the slides here. It's actually better. So we actually released at least 40 research findings in the last few years, covering the renewable energy resources evaluating, about the regional and international power grid planning. So based on those research reports, we can better share our experiences, our solutions, our networks with all over the world, with our members as well as our partners. Another thing is what I just highlighted. We have a strong network. We have 7 regional offices, also working very locally with the local associations and local members. And here are the participants we would like to attract. The first part, most important part, is actually government officers, as well as those state-owned energy companies. And the second part is actually the management personnel from energy and power enterprises, and as well as the technical experts. And the most important part is actually our members, because we are a membership-based organization. And here are some topics we would like to cover for our capacity building. Because people realize that GEICO is actually an energy-focused organization, but we are doing a lot of research works and capacity building programs supporting all the SDGs. So you could see we're actually doing a lot of training programs covering climate, environment, energy transition, economic, social, and sustainable development, and also initiatives about energy and power development and practices in key countries. For example, we are helping Egypt. We finished actually 2 training programs with us, supported by the Ministry of Energy of Egypt. Also, advanced power technology, equipment, and standards. We have Ms. Avio, who is going to talk about standards today, joining our panel as well. And the power system market operations, which actually Europe plays a very crucial role. So we did a lot of training programs, as I said, supported by those local institutions. Here are several examples. We are going to, give the certificates to everyone who has joined our training programs. Here are some examples for GEICO's capacity building programs. Right now, we have actually attracted more than 60 countries joining our programs. More than 2,500 participants actually gained a lot from our programs. And this is the first one we have done. It's in last year from September to December. It's actually supported by Central Africa Power Pool, because for capacity building, we're actually focusing on those developing countries, the global south. So those programs actually started from Africa, from Latin America. And this one is actually supported by the League of Arab States, and as well as UNFCCC and the Regional Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency. We also have other examples, but I don't want to dive too much about this. And all the resources, all the courses are actually open. You can easily access on our website. So, including our research report. I just want to highlight, we actually released a very important research report on 15th in the UNFCCC Pavilion. So actually, we have several printed hard copies, and you can also scan afterwards to get the electronic version. So without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Dr. Yang Fang, who is the Vice President of the Research Institute of GEICO. She's going to share a very important research finding from GEICO, that is a compendium on greenhouse gases, baselines, and monitoring energy sector. So the floor is yours, Ms. Yang Fang.
Thank you, Monitory. Okay. Yes. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'm Yang Fang from GEICO. On behalf of GEICO, today I'm here to present the joint research report entitled Compendium on Greenhouse Gas Baselines and Monitoring in Energy Sectors. As we know, the global emissions are continuously rising, and the fossil fuel is the primary source. And reducing the CO2 emissions in the energy sector is crucial for achieving the temperature control goals of the Paris Agreement. And the UNFCCC Capacity Building Assessment Report indicates that developing countries face common challenges in energy mitigation actions like weak of resources, weak data foundations, and limited capacity buildings. In order to strengthen the capacity of developing countries, GEICO, UNFCCC, and UNEP jointly compiled this compendium. This compendium is aimed to provide technical guidance for policymakers in developing countries on emission accounting, scenario design, and policy framework in the energy sector. So in the next part, I would like to briefly share some knowledge and information in this report. The first part is about the energy emission accounting method. The greenhouse gas emission accounting provides an essential data foundation for countries to formulate reduction targets developing countries should follow standard methods and guidelines for the emission accounting. At the same time, choose different methods according to their actual situations. At the starting point, it is necessary to define the scope of accounting and provide the accounting methods for different scenarios and clarify the requirements for emission inventories so that the country can enhance the capacity of emission inventories. In this report, the scope of accounting in the energy sector includes 3 subsectors: energy production, processing, and transmission. The energy consumption is not included. And there are 2 types of energy emissions. They are stationary combustion and fugitive emissions. According to the IPCC guidelines for national emission inventories, there are 3-tier approaches for calculating the mitigations. And the Tier 1 approach requires that countries use global average emission factors and use the country-specific activity data to calculate the total emissions. And for the Tier 2 approaches, use the country-specific emission factors. And for the Tier 3 approach, use the plant-specific emission factors. And this has the highest data quality requirement and lowest uncertainties. And this accounting method will be applied to the subsectors in the energy sector. As the largest emitter, the power and heat production accounts for about 38% of the total CO2 emissions. And it mainly comes from the fossil fuel combustion and desulfurization process. And the second largest emitter is fossil fuel mining. It consists emissions during the extraction, processing, transportation stages of the coal, oil, and gas. They are primarily CO2 and methane from the combustion and the fugitive emissions. The scenario design is an important research tool for countries to submit NDCs and formulate the mitigation strategies and implement the mitigation action plans. And the process for scenario design can be divided into 5 steps. Define the objectives, establish the baseline scenarios, design the mitigation scenarios, calculate the potential of the mitigation, and implement the MRVs. And this is an example. GEDICO has proposed the GEI scenario and for achieving the temperature control goals of the Paris Agreement, and designed the carbon neutrality pathways for China and for 6 continents. And this scenario has been selected as one of the 7 illustrative pathways in the 6th IPCC assessment report. And the UNFCCC requires countries to submit a biannual report every 2 years and NDC report every 5 years. And the counting method can help the countries to track the mitigation results in a timely manner and periodically adjust the mitigation strategies and enhance the emission transparency through the MRV mechanism. So in the last part, I would like to briefly introduce some information about the policy making and the mechanism designing in the report. This report has established the policy framework for the energy sector, outlining 6 main types of mitigation policy tools and focusing on 3 key areas. And there are some successful cases and good examples for developing countries in this report. As for the climate legislation, it provides the fundamental legal basis for the policy implementation. And the UK's Climate Change Act was the first legal framework established at the national level. And for the strategic planning, currently there are over 145 countries has announced net zero targets covering 90% of the global emission. And as for the market mechanism, more than 10 countries and regions have established carbon markets, and now China has the world's largest one. And as for the economic policy, it includes the tax and fiscal policies, investment and financial policies. According to our studies, by 2030, the global investment in clean energy, power grid, and energy storage should increase to 2 to 4 times in order to achieve the tripling renewable capacity targets. And from the technical point of view, the performance standards like the energy efficiency standard, emissions standards should be considered. And the last but not the least, administrative tools. Like in China, some binding indicators has been set for the local government performance evaluation system to achieve the dual carbon policy. So based on the policy framework, countries also need to establish the safeguard mechanism and implement the mitigation actions in different priority areas and evaluate the comprehensive benefits and effectiveness of these emission actions. And in this report, we recommended the 6 priority mitigation actions. The first is to widely deploy clean energy bases. And the world aims to triple the renewable energy generation capacity to reach 11,000 gigawatts by 2030. For developing countries, it is required to accelerate the clean energy development according to their situations. And the second is to low carbon utilization of fossil energy. Like in Asia, a number of countries are making effort to transform the coal-fired generation to flexible resources to integrate more renewables to the grid and decrease the utilization hours of these coal-fired generations. And the third is about the energy efficiency improvement. Due to the uneven distribution of renewables and load centers, the power grid interconnection is a prerequisite and foundation for accelerating the clean energy development and electrification. The ultra-high voltage transmission technology is mature and cost-effective, has been widely used in China and all over the world. Like a 200 kV DC product has been built and put into operation, connecting Ethiopia and Kenya. And this provides an important channel for cross-border clean energy trading. And also the electrification in the end-use sector and carbon removal, like the CCUS, DAC, are considered as the priority actions as well in this paper, in this report. And GEDCO has developed the Global Renewable Energy Assessment Platform, which can help countries to do the site selection of hydro, wind, solar, renewable bases, and the power grid expansion from a global perspective and a regional perspective. And this can provide a useful tool for developing countries to enhance the capacity on power system planning. And the implement of these mitigation projects requires considering the mitigation effectiveness and the synergetic benefits to SDGs. And now GEDCO is also working on this area to developing the useful tools for developing countries. So I would like to stop here. For more detailed information and knowledge, please feel free to download the report from the website of UNFCCC and GEDCO. We are willing to work with all the stakeholders to strengthen the capacity building in the energy sectors and struggle for the climate goals. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Yang. It actually shows a very good example about the partnerships we had. And this support is actually strongly supported by UNFCCC and UNEP. So the GEICO is actually very open for any joint research programs. So anyone from any institutions who is interested, you can get in touch with us, especially Dr. Yang, after this event. So today, we're actually very honored to have a very excellent lineup of speakers, especially from our co-organizers, International Hydropower Association. So next, I would like to introduce Mr. Eddie Rich, the CEO of International Hydropower Association, who is going to have an opening speech after our panel discussion, because we just shared our training programs, shared our research findings, but as well, we are willing to have a discussion about the policies, the tools, the solutions, the best practices, as well as maybe lifestyle as well. So, Mr. Eddie Rich, the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Bo. Thanks, GEICO and UNFCCC. Thanks, distinguished guests. Wow, it's great to be here. We are talking about capacity building, but we're also talking about building capacity, building the infrastructure that is required, and doing it at a pace we've never seen or even imagined before. And we've got to do that coherently. We've got to do that with standards, with understanding. It's going to take a collaboration, a way of working we have never experienced. And in order to be able to look to that future, that explosion of activity, we have to look a little bit to the past. So I want to put a question out to the audience. Who here has been to the Three Gorges plant in China? Come on. Nobody? The largest power plant in the world, which is 50 years old this year. And it's extraordinary. Did you know that the Three Gorges plant, which is 22 gigawatts, it wasn't actually built in order to be a power plant. It was built in order to mitigate against floods. Adding the power just sort of came as an afterthought, a byproduct. Because, and this is important, think back to Chinese history here. For millennia, about 500 people who would live alongside the Yangtze River every year have been contesting with this issue, how to tame this mighty river. Because it was flooding in different ways each year, impinging on homes, of course, people had to move, but also livestock and crops. It was destroying lives. But it was also providing all that livelihood. That's why people lived by the river. So, the idea, hey, let's try to control and tame the river. Now, 1974, think back, okay? Your history lessons, you know that this is the time when Mao Zedong and Richard Nixon were beginning to talk. And the Chinese look at this project and they go, all right, okay, how do we build something of this scale, this magnitude, which has never been attempted before? We have to look to skills around the world. We have to look at where we can find those skills. So they drew in from Europe, from the US, from everywhere they could. And here we go, 50 years, roll forward. Who's building the most renewables in the world? China. China is building, in the last decade, has built more than half the hydropower additional capacity. It's building around 80% of the solar panels around the world. Similar story, green hydrogen. So, who is the world looking to now as the experts? China looked to the West in the 70s. Now the West and everyone, the South, everyone is looking to China. And that learning of the skills, how the skills are developed, and this is going to be really important to understand then how we do develop that capacity, understand how we collectively work together, even in times of geopolitical complexity. Okay, so let's look a little bit at the figures that are required to do this. In 2023, at Dubai, this time last year, you'll recall that the world leaders made the pledge to treble renewables by 2030. Okay, 3 times renewables. It's built on a campaign that we in the Global Renewables Alliance, so that's the solar industry represented here by Abdullah, with the wind, hydropower, geothermal, long duration energy storage, and Julia is here, and she's actually the chair of the Global Renewables Alliance, and the Green Hydrogen Organization. And we were advocating for trebling renewables, and that got adopted. Okay, a year on, we're advocating for a global storage target. And this is really important because what we're saying is volume is really important, trebling renewables, but we're also saying it's not just about volume. It's about storage, it's about grids and interconnectivity, the work that GECO is leading on. So trying to fit all the pieces of the puzzle together. So this is a complex set of issues at which to be building at enormous pace. Within that global storage target, what we're talking about, by the way, is 6 times the amount of storage by 2030 than exists now. Staggering, right? Staggering figures. But that is needed in order to make sure that all the solar that is coming onto the system, all the wind that's coming into the system can be efficiently used and provide reliable energy by having enormous batteries, chemical and water and air and all sorts of other new technologies that Julia will talk about. We, in the International Hydropower Association, our focus is particularly on the largest of the storage technologies, the one which has been adopted already at scale. That's pumped storage, hydropower. We're going to need a lot more of this under any scenario. And we, this week, have established the Global Alliance on Pumped Storage. So, so far, almost 35 countries and agencies around the world have agreed to join this. That number is growing all the time. And that is a set of governments, of agencies who agree to come together to share practice. How do we develop this? What are the skills needed? What is the learning? What are the policies that are needed? Because the market alone will not deliver. We would very much welcome GECO into that to join the alliance and any other governments and agencies here represented. I want to say one other thing. We talked about pace. We're talking about the different technologies, but we've also got to make sure that we build well, not just fast, but well and sustainably. And many of the colleagues on the panel today are going to talk about that. In the hydropower sector, we've been working for 20 years with governments, with civil society organizations, both conservation, climate, and social, to make sure that we have developed good practice and best practice standards in hydropower sustainability, ESG. And that now is a standard which is independent of the industry. This isn't us marking our own homework. This isn't the International Hydropower Association standard. It's the Hydropower Sustainability Standard. It's governed by a multi-stakeholder group. And that is hopefully something that can be replicated across different sectors to ensure that what we're building is not only fast, but it will be there for the longer term, and it will do so as a net benefit both to the communities and also to the environment. So with that, water, wind and sun is going to get the job done. Now let's build, and let's build at pace with the right skills. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, so can I invite onto the stage my colleagues, my panelists for this session. So, Julia Suda, CEO of the Long Duration Energy Storage Council. Please, applause. As I said, Julia's actually my boss in a way, because she's the chair of the Global Renewables Alliance. And I'm a vice chair of that, and we're both founding members, proud to be. May I introduce Avia Mariani, from the European Climate Pact Ambassador and Director of Ecological Transition Solutions and International Affairs at Beam Cube SAS. Applause. Welcome, Avia. And my friend, Mr. Abdullah Al-Shamali, who is the Policy Director of the Global Solar Council, another one of the Global Renewables Alliance members. Hi, Abdullah. And may I finally introduce Mr. Alejandro Kilpatrick, the manager of the capacity building, I can't read my own writing, subdivision here at UNFCCC. Thank you. What a panel. Great to be here and great to be discussing the most challenging issue that we're facing about how to build all of this new capacity, different technologies at pace and with coherence, not only with one another, but for future and for standardization across the globe. Let me start with Julia. And Julia, you just this week, we're now on Monday, aren't we? So it was last week. We're all getting a bit confused with COP dates. Last week launched a key document report about long duration energy storage. Tell us a little bit about what's in there and what it means for this agenda.
Sure, and I just want to say thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. Thank you to the UNFCCC, thank you to GEICO, thank you to Eddie, to you and your partners. Thank you to all of you for being here. The heart of all of this work that we're doing are all of us. It's the community, it's people. And it's so important that we really work on the different tools we have as individuals and our organizations and partners to collaborate. And hearing earlier and seeing the different tool sets that are being performed with platforms, the ability to share data and empower all of us to create stronger and better policies are so critical. So thank you all for taking the initiative, being part of this community, and working together to actually implement the policies, build the renewable energy and the storage projects, and scale and deploy so we all get those benefits. We're really thrilled to announce our first ever annual report. And what's in this report, it's really exciting because it took working with our partners around the world and our members. The LDES Council is a global organization based in 22 countries. We were launched at COP26 to really demonstrate and show there is an enormous market and potential for long duration energy storage, to really be part of the decarbonization. And in this report, we show how LDES is imperative to decarbonization of all energy systems, power, heat, and hydrogen, and that every aspect of every community can have long-duration energy storage provide solutions to continue to build on the flexibility piece that Eddie mentioned earlier, and the fact that we really can fill in the gaps when renewables aren't there 24/7. And so this report highlights 4 key findings that were imperative to the decarbonization. As we're really excited about the storage target, 1.5 terawatts being, by 2030, being launched by the COP president. We're appreciative of his leadership, and many countries are signing on. We hope your country will sign on in your organization. This is really important. And we look forward to making this go sixfold. And when you bring long duration energy storage in, we're looking at how fast we have to go. And this is 50 times faster because we have 5 years to do this. But we can because we really have this vibrant community of people, the technical capacity. How are we building our capabilities to really push this forward? And we lay out 7 enablers in this report of how the vibrant community of all of us can really bring together and integrate the lessons learned from pumped hydro, from many other industries, and how standards do help market security and reliability, but also how we really need to focus on identifying the needs, the financing tools, and the deployment. So just want to share 2 examples of capacity building. Working with our partners is so critical to our lifeblood. One, in the Philippines, we worked with our partners with Solar and Storage Association. We set up webinars and education forums to work with regulators, developers, policymakers, anyone that was interested in looking at the pairing of storage and solar. And we did and finance the Asia Development Bank, the World Bank. And these webinars were really helpful to just have an open forum to look at what policies have been created, what technologies exist, what are the different stages of development, and what can work to replace a backup diesel generator, what can work to replace a coal plant, what can work to replace a gas plant, and really have honest, helpful conversations that were really empowering. And this led to creating some additional market criteria and financial templates that made it much easier for a partnership between the regulators and the developers to move faster to then hopefully access the market and deploy. So there's already been tremendous benefit. We look forward to working with many other countries on providing more webinars. The second point, working with our partners, the World Bank, and they have created an energy storage partnership with over 50 global members, and we're honored to be part of this. They just had a meeting in Morocco 2 weeks ago, right before COP, where we came together to talk about case studies, to share templates. The World Bank created a template for power purchase agreements for renewable energy and storage, and showing that we don't have to reinvent the wheel, we can advance the wheel so it really benefits local communities. And as we do this, we're looking at creating a huge marketplace where we have $540 billion a year in savings when we deploy the 8 terawatts of long duration energy storage. So it's a great motivator to see how important this is. And also large scale projects, small scale projects, really building on the leadership in this room. And then the last point again is the vibrant community of all of us. We can't do this without us working together. And so really empowering us with these tools, with the platforms, with these opportunities so that we can push the 1.5 terawatt energy storage target at 6 times faster, and we can really start integrating long duration to bring the benefits to the community. Thank you.
Juliet, those are some staggering figures, aren't they? I mean, we're talking about this global energy target, which we hope will get adopted this week down the corridor by world leaders, of 6 times the amount of storage, energy storage that exists now in the next 5 years. 6 times in the next 5 years, that gets us to 1.5 terawatt. And you're saying by 2040, we're looking to get that to 8 terawatt, 50 times faster.
Yes, because we're going to be reaching our 11 terawatt goal of renewable energy. So we used to talk about millions, then we started talking about billions, and now we're talking about trillions. So now we have to talk about terawatts because we have to make sure that the terawatts meet the trillions of dollars invested. So, but yes, it's big, but it is totally achievable with all of us staying focused on the end goals to benefit our communities and our colleagues.
Yeah, we'll get on to how come that is, we believe that's doable. when we get on to hear about the advances in the solar sector, for example, which is going at accumulating at that pace. But first of all, let me turn to Avia. You've been working on standards, making sure that the construction, what we're building here, is going to be of appropriate standards across the world. Can you say a bit about that?
First of all, thank you. I would like to briefly introduce the European Climate Pact, which is, we are a satellite event of the European Climate Pact by the Directorate General Climate Action. This is an engagement, a citizen engagement and capacity building program established and launched at Glasgow COP, at the Glasgow COP. And we are 800 about ambassadors in the European Union working exactly on activating synergies and competences. So about us, I'm here as a representative of a company. We work on digital twins that are a fundamental element for being able to achieving all the objectives that we are pursuing here. Skills and standards, which is the two overarching themes of today, are absolutely connected to what we do. We apply our technologies to both industrial estates and the construction and infrastructure and integration of grid systems for demand and response management. We have a large pilot project, which is not a pilot, it's a commercial solution. We are managing with our digital twin in full life cycle and with a unique reference of truth. The entire campus of the École Polytechnique, which is the largest polytechnical school in France. Now, what we did with this company, of which I'm also a shareholder, we integrated in the hierarchy and the structure of the digital twin the best-in-class methodologies, because we're talking about measurement. And by the way, your launched report is amazing, and it works very well together with our work. We take European methodologies, the product environmental footprint, because it is holistic. And what we are talking about here, integrating nature and making compatible large projects in renewables, means distribution of land use, means integrating all the parameters. Therefore, we cannot only consider the emission, the GHG emissions, that is fundamental, but we need to integrate also the other quantified parameters, which is very much more complicated because we haven't worked yet. For instance, for the biodiversity, the CBD is working on these ones. But we believe that the integrated LCA, which is a very enhanced integrated LCA developed by the European Commission in partnership with several industry platforms throughout 15 years, is a very, very advanced model. And we can also utilize, the video was showing some of the references related to the project in the École Polytechnique. It's 250,000 square meters of buildings. So it's a small city, and it's corresponding to a small city of 200,000 people. Therefore, we're already applying it to small-scale districts in cities. We are working on the recovery of a Michelin site, which has to be reconverted in the Brittany region, always in France, in partnership with what? With the administration, the agglomeration of Vannes, which is the administration level of the city of Vannes, and other industrial operators, for making it is also a business case. What I want to say here, and we are here all together, is we have to break down silos, working on the standards, how to get these things to communicate. Industry foundation classes, for instance, are fundamental for the building industry. The digital portfolio of the new directive for ecosystems in building in the European Union is very important. We will have to connect all these elements, and we will have to be able to report automatically and seamlessly. We have the technologies, we are proving it, we are open to collaboration.
Thank you. That's a very strong message. The need for us to collaborate together, the offer to collaborate together to make sure that we are building this to good accredited standards. Thank you for that, Avia. Can I turn to Abdullah, the solar sector, Global Solar Council? I mean, we all know this is an industry that is growing it's doubling every 3 years. Well, actually, even faster than that. Because yesterday, or again, I'm sorry, I'm getting so confused with dates. A couple of days ago, you were celebrating 2 terawatts of installed capacity, just 2 and a little bit more years since you celebrated 1 terawatt. I mean, this is faster than doubling every 3 years, and it's collecting pace. How do you stop that becoming a sort of Wild West?
Thank you, Eddie. It is really exciting times for us. It really broke all expectations, all projections, in different reports. Of course, this is in due to how the industry is developing and how the manufacturing is developing, also in main parts in China, and also for the very high demand we're seeing all around. So at this point, we're kind of really catching up with these capacities, and it's a win for all renewables. It's a win for the energy transition, for reducing our emissions. But at the same time, it also presents challenges of how we can service these new aspirations, how we can properly build, as you said, like in the beginning. So yes, 2 terawatt. We celebrated that a couple of days ago, and this the latest reports say that we currently employ around 7 million people in the solar industry, and that makes it not just the largest employer among renewables, but also among all other power generation technologies. Just shows you also the scale of not just in terms of installations, but also in terms of how many people are new employed, and how also the trends in people interested in renewable energy. So of course this let's say 7 million people around the world, but still it's many different regions. They require a lot of they still miss a lot of needed people. They still need workforce. Just the other day I heard that Germany still needs 200,000 workers for them to achieve their targets in the future, which is a big number, and it's a challenge where these workers can be coming from. This comes into the question of training, about how we can mobilize skills around the world to fill the gaps in other places. We reached the 2 terawatt, but we're projecting that in 2030 we're going to be installing 1 terawatt annually. This is a massive amount, and really does need a lot of skilled workers to be implementing the work. And there's 2 things that are important here. One is that, of course, we want things to be properly built. We need the skilled workers to exist where we want to install these projects, and also for the workers themselves, we want them to be properly trained to avoid accidents, to assure that health and safety standards are up to pace. So this is really a protection for the people working in it as well. And thank you for saying connecting how we need to connect together, and not working in silos. And that's why we are now considering at the Global Solar Council, we are launching an initiative. We're calling it the Solar Training Standards Initiative. And this is a global initiative to standardize standardized skills for technicians working mainly now in utility scale solar PV projects. Because we do notice that there are a lot of local standards, there are a lot of national standards, and then it could be very challenging to start new markets where there's not yet, this maybe not necessarily a formal education in solar PV, and standards maybe from one country to another country can be a bit different. So connecting these different standards together, that's different national initiatives, kind of having an umbrella standard for all of them. We really hope to achieve to ease the mobilization of workers between different countries and regions, to increase the reliability and enhance performance of the different projects, to enhance the build, which in its way, it's good for investors because this increased production reduces, operation and maintenance costs, and most importantly, reduce injuries that we can see. We are learning from the wind industry. The wind industry has been doing phenomenal work in that, so we're cooperating with the Global Wind Organization to kind of copy the wind industry model into the solar industry, and we're launching it this year. So we do hope we can enhance cooperation on that, reaching as the industry we can make the adoption happen on an industry level. But it would be very interesting to also make connection with other regions and see what different standards and how they can interconnect and work together.
Thanks. I think Avia wants to come in on that, and I have a couple of comments.
I don't want to steal your time. I would like to suggest to consider discussing the matter with the EIT, European Institute of Innovation and Technology, which is co-established by the European Commission. Why? Because under something called the Net Zero Industry Act, which is a part of the Green Deal for industrial green competitiveness, they are setting up an academy for training of solar photovoltaic workers, technicians, across the value chain. They aim at 100,000 people skilled in the European Union. We have this huge gap in competence, basically, and conversion. Sorry.
Thank you for that suggestion. Abdullah, do you want to come back on that, or you take that point? Yep. Thank you. Good. Okay. So can I turn to Alejandro? There we go. We've heard that 7 million just working in solar, but need a lot more. If we're going to go at 50 times the pace in long duration energy storage, we're going to need workers. We're going to need people. This is part of what we call the just transition. But the workers that we need the problem is the workers are not necessarily the ones who are coming out of the fossil fuel. This is a really deep challenge. Where are these skills going to come from? Where are we going to get the people and the skills? Tell us a bit about Paris capacity building and the other work that UNFCCC is doing on this.
Thank you very much, Eddie, and I'm very happy that we have this exchange here when you provided you received some suggestions, Abdel. That's precisely the spirit of this capacity building hub, to learn about what others are doing, but also exchange knowledge and promote collaboration. So thanks for the question, Eddie. I think maybe one point I would like to first emphasize is that we're very happy at the capacity building subdivision with the cooperation with GEICO. We signed an MOU last year, and this, I'm happy to say, this event, this participation, is the first step of a wider cooperation that we'll be developing with GEICO and partners of its network. So very exciting about seeing what GEICO is doing on capacity building and how to join forces and amplify and magnify. I use these words, and I think that's what's needed, to amplify and magnify. We heard from Abdallah and others about the pace. We're not keeping up with the pace in terms of the skills needed. And here I would like to make a point. I think there is a special emphasis on young people, the training for young people, those that are coming out of school and how to develop curricula. There's a lot of youth entrepreneurship, and we're seeing that a lot of the workforce, as you say, maybe some it's coming from the fossil fuel industry, but it's also something that a lot coming from the grassroots. And seeing a lot of interest from young people to entrepreneurship, but also are learning these skills of vocational training, all these existing modalities, how to amplify them and scaling up. And I think for that, collaboration is key. Partnerships with institutions like GEICO and others is fundamental. In the sense of particularly building and retaining those skills, because we're seeing a lot of tendencies to do very needs-based trainings or skill development, project-based, but it's more about the more programmatic, longer-term skill development in different fields. In this context, we have what we call the PCCB network, which is a voluntary association of institutions either doing capacity building per se or interested in capacity building. So it's an open invitation to participants here. The intention is to put institutions together to not only exchange knowledge and experiences, but to identify how to collaborate. And I think that has worked very successfully in a couple of projects. So networking, of course, is fundamental, but in this context, I think what's very important is you have to have clear, you're building the capacities for exactly what. So, and there might be very context specifics, and I think it goes back to your point of standards. I think the issue of standards is fundamental in terms of, for example, there's in Europe, you know, there's a lot of mobility of workers, but if they're trained with a standard in a country that may be not accepted in another country, outside of the European Union, with the European Union, that creates issues. Maybe that's what you were referring to. So I think there's a lot of things to exchange on standardization, and also we're looking at the emerging economies, and I think that's an important aspect to look at. What are the skills they need? What are the skills they have? Because there might already be a lot of skills. So it's not only north-south, but also potentially south to north. And I think also we're seeing a lot in the UNFCCC process is the modalities for capacity building. Using new tools, using new modalities, peer-to-peer learning, south-to-south cooperation seems to be very effective. I know Geico is a champion of that, and you've been doing that for a while. So I think it's about going back to the main issues of networking, collaboration, scaling up, amplifying, and and breaking down those islands, and looking at cross-sectoral in the renewable energies cooperation. I think that you gave an example of working with the wind association. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there. So I'll stop here in spirit of time. Thank you.
Thanks, Alejandro. May I just say, I don't think the renewables have ever worked as closely as they are doing right now. The Global Renewables Alliance is a great sort of overarching network to be able to bring together some of those conversations. The specific issues that you get in solar and wind. We're working very closely with geothermal because it's more site-specific kind of work. Standards reflect that set of issues. So I think a very strong message, of course, to us about, you know, the way we need to work together in doing that. But I think a very strong message to you, the audience. We need you, right? And we need you speaking for the renewables industry, the need to recruit, the need to build the capacity. We've got about 60 seconds, but I do want to open the floor up. We've heard a lot of very interesting, some sort of quite challenging points here today, some remarkable, in some ways daunting, but also exciting figures, sort of mobilizing our minds. Do you have any questions for the panelists? Yes, please. Couple out there. You will need. No, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is İlker from Turkey. Pump storage hydro water systems seems to be a great potential. And in my country, there is a huge geographical potential over this system.
Your country?
Turkey.
Turkey.
But those places has very delicate ecosystems, and the local people's economy based on this agricultural products, which is highly integrated with this ecosystem. Is there a chance to put the agriculture into the methodology and equation, financial equation of those systems? What is your suggestion about that?
This is specifically on hydropower.
Yeah.
I will come to that. Can I just take the second question right behind you, and then we'll round up together. Thank you.
Thank you so much. My name is Lydia Machaka. I am from the Catholic Network based in Brussels. So I really was fascinated by the presentations, and indeed there were massive figures that were raised, like terawatts, increasing the capacity. I've seen also in one of the slides, but I don't think it was well expanded, like critical minerals. None of the speakers talked about how to address this issue, where they're going to be sourced. And I see a lot of mention of community. I think it's talking about this community, but not where these minerals are sourced. So could you please just address that element? How are you addressing the potential negative impacts of the extraction of these minerals? Thank you.
Brilliant question. We will come to that. Very, very important. I think we've got one more. No, that was all right. She asked. Okay, good. Thank you. Look, two great questions. First of all, on hydropower and agriculture. This should be a mutual win-win. I mean, if you are designing well a cascade or even a single dam, then it should be an ability to help manage the water infrastructure. What we're seeing, of course, with climate volatility is going to be a lot more floods, a lot more drought. Like it or not, we're going to need more water infrastructure. We're going to need it for agriculture. We're going to need it for irrigation. We're going to need it for transport. We're going to need it for flood and drought control. So we need to make sure it's designed that it doesn't take water out of the system, that it can replicate what would naturally happen. And that is what that is built in to the hydropower sustainability standard that I talked about. And I think we'd very much like to see every new project in Turkey, in lots of other countries, to certify themselves against that standard, because badly managed projects are going to be a problem. But there is absolutely no reason that going for, in IHA, my over 100 members have signed up to a very bold statement saying going forward the only acceptable hydropower is sustainable hydropower, and that is measured by this independent standard. So if any of my members are breaking that, they're out. Can we speak afterwards and we'll exchange so you can follow up with the Hydropower Sustainability Alliance? Who wants to take the critical minerals? Oh, loads of people. Let me start with Abdullah and Sola.
No, actually, I wanted to address the first question, but from the solar point of view, of how agriculture and solar can work together, not just in the traditional sense of using solar in remote areas and empowering farmers to either pump water, but also in what we call agrivoltaics. So, and this concept of installing solar PV panels on top of your crops can have mutual benefits. So you can just, of course, you use your land to generate electricity, but studies have shown that crops efficiency is enhanced by installing the solar panels, either for like a bit of climate control around it, but also it also helps in soil degradation and other factors. There's a nice story from India where an airport they had a big piece of land that they installed a big solar project to source for the electricity, and at the same time they contracted some of the local farmers to plant watermelons under the panels, and apparently the watermelons was like so efficient and like the crop was so good that the selling of the watermelons was more it was much profitable than even the entire project. So there's a lot of ways to integrate also, like you said, solar and agrivoltaics. This is what I wanted to add. I'll pass the second question to other panelists.
On the minerals piece, I'm more than happy to speak up about this offline, but we have mining member companies that are part of the LDES Council because they are using LDES in their mining capacities to get green steam or green heat. Not only are they, pulling out the minerals, but they're using LDES in their ESG goals. To your point of community benefits, this is an ongoing conversation that a lot of us are pushing really hard on because some mining companies do a really good job about bringing in the local voices and really bringing in transition conversations and capability conversations about upskilling. Others need to do a lot better, and so we've been working with them. But I can speak more a little bit offline about some of the toolkits, the standardization, and accountability metrics that are being put into place.
I will try and address very briefly the two elements because, in my opinion, they are connected. I would like to make a point here. As Climate Pact Ambassador, I do not speak as a spokesperson of the European Commission. Therefore, what I'm going to say here now is my own analysis, okay? The European model is trying to integrate, or at least theoretically, through a system of holistic and complex directives that are tackling all the environmental impacts of our action plans towards the decarbonization and the ecological transition. That means for hydropower, for instance, that you not only have to consider what are the impacts on the water, which is regulated by the Water Framework Directive, for instance, but also nature, but also on biodiversity. There are a set of very complex rules, and this is what we mean when we say it is a very holistic approach that has to be extremely, extremely seriously done. And another point that I would like to make here, hydropower is important in Europe, of course, and globally. However, there is a risk, a material risk to hydropower industry itself, which is connected to the 29% more draft that we have under the current climate conditions. Water reservoirs, and especially in certain areas, are vital to the survival and maintenance of life. I mean, water in the Himalayan regions, if you cut that out with the glacier going off and melting, it affects 1,400,000,000 people. So this is a really material element that we need to take into account when we're planning how we're going to use the different energy sources. And that's why we also believe the Commission is working a lot on research projects as well to improve all these elements. And I think we need to be really, really, really serious on the standards and what we do. And we have to implement, and now I get to the material resources, the earths, the rare earths or the minerals. An approach in eco-design from the very beginning. That means that you have to reuse the sites, first point. Do not go and build new. This is a very, very fine.
Okay, then I need to complete, but just to finish your point on there with the hydropower sites. I mean, if you're capturing the water, you're not losing the water. So hydropower is about using the water for more than one purpose and reusing and reusing. It's not about the design approach, exactly. And that's an important, that we have to design it right even as we do it at pace, which brings us back to the overarching theme of the session of how do we do this with capacity, with the skills, at pace and with coherence. Thank you to all the panelists. Thank you to the audience. Thank you to Kiko and UNFCCC. Good to see you.
Thank you so much, our excellent panelists. I think it's a very fruitful discussion for the excellent messages, for the enlightening ideas. Thank you so much. Before our group together, I would like to introduce our research report because we have run out all the hard copies. And you can easily search GEICO and then download all the research findings. And I would just like to highlight for each COP, we're definitely going to have a very high-level side event with UNFCCC Secretariat, another one with the capacity building team in the capacity building hub, and for next COP, because we're going to celebrate our 10th anniversary. So it's going to be another one in China Pavilion. So you're more than welcome to join us. Thank you so much for all the participants. So for the lady, maybe you can continue the discussion later on. Thank you so much. So all the speakers, Dr. Yang, please join us for a group picture. Thank you. Thank you, distinguished participants. Thank you so much.